Eine wichtige Rolle beim Einsatz digitaler Medien in der Kita spielen die Eltern. Wie können Kitas die Bildungspartnerschaft mit den Eltern in einer digitalen Welt positiv und wirksam gestalten? Wie gelingt es, alle Eltern zu erreichen und einzubinden? Inwieweit können digitale Kommunikations- und Dokumentationstools die Bildungspartnerschaft mit Eltern unterstützen? Antworten auf diese Fragen hat Dr. Chip Donohue vom Erikson Institute in Chicago. Er ist Gründungsdirektor des dortigen Technology in Early Childhood Centers und Mitherausgeber eines 2017 erschienenen Buches zu familiärem Engagement im digitalen Zeitalter. Für seine wissenschaftliche Arbeit wurde er mehrfach ausgezeichnet.
Hi, I'm Chip Donohue, founding director of the Technology and Early Childhood Center at Erikson Institute in Chicago, and a senior fellow and advisor of the Fred Rogers Center at St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. I'm sorry we can't be together today. Wish we were face-to-face, but we'll use this technology to stay connected and to reach out in interesting ways. I guess we're doing a little social distancing by managing the conference in this way. I'm going to talk about how caregivers can support parents in the digital age and really think about family engagement strategies, technology-mediated family engagement strategies, and the role of caregivers as media mentors in this digital age and the role that educators can play. Along the way, I also have done some thinking about this pandemic we're all in the middle of and how it has influenced what educators can and could be doing with families. So I'll be sharing some of that as well. In the lower part of the screen, you see my Family Engagement in the Digital Age book, a couple of years old now. A lot of what I'll be talking about today comes from that book and comes from the research of the contributing authors in that book. And then to the left of that, Exploring Key Issues in Early Childhood and Technology is the latest book out, and really was this notion of thoughts from the thought leaders. I invited 17 thought leaders from around the world to contribute essays versus chapters about what they were thinking matters most as we think about technology and young children. I'm going to start with some thoughts from that book and then mostly focus on the family engagement book. In search of powerful ideas, when one enters a new domain of knowledge, one initially encounters a crowd of new ideas. Good learners are able to pick out those which are powerful. So my challenge to all of us today is to think about the powerful ideas that we hear and that we're working on ourselves with the children and parents and families in our care and how we share those powerful ideas in ways that improve practice. So here's one of our contributing authors, David Kleeman, works at Dubbit in the UK. He talks about this idea of ubiquitous interactivity and actually seems very appropriate for what we're doing now and the way we're all using technology to stay connected, to reach out, to be part of conversations and meetings and work in an interactive way. So interactivity has become very ubiquitous. He writes this: the concept of screen time has become meaningless in a world where screens bring entertainment, learning, discovery, communication, play, creation, and more. And certainly in the United States, and I assume in Germany as well, the issue of screen time has come back and lots of concerns about children spending way too much time on screens because they are home and screens become the number one thing. So I think this notion of letting go of that old concept of screen time is very important in our thinking. And I'll come back to that. Warren Buchleitner, who is part of the Children's Technology Review, writes this: mobile technology has made us the first generation of parents to be physically far from our grown children, but we have the capacity to be psychologically closer. And again, what better time to make that comment than right now, as we use technology to stay psychologically closer, even when we can't be present or when we have to be physically distant from one another, from family members, from friends, from schoolmates, from teachers, all of this. We're finding that these technology tools that we have now are really giving us this new opportunity, and that's important. Dr. Jenny Radetzky from the University of Michigan Medical School and American Academy of Pediatrics has been writing a lot about parenting in the digital age. She has this reminder for all of us: without conscious reflection about parents' own relationships with mobile devices, It will be difficult to ask parents to become the media mentors for their children. We hope they will be. So there's that idea of media mentor. In this case, Jenny's talking about parents as media mentor, and I'm going to be talking about educators helping parents become media mentors for their own children. And we're going to come back to this idea about parenting in the digital age as well. Helena Lopez from the Global Family Research Project writes about how families matter in the digital age. She says, parents are turning to families and friends, teachers, and recommendations from schools for guidance in navigating media. Educators, media developers, and community institutions have a responsibility to help parents access quality resources, use them wisely, and set plans for media use. We are turning for advice around media in every direction possible. Again, I would argue that right now, more than ever, parents are looking for advice, for tips, for what works. They're turning to teachers, they're turning to family members, they're turning to workmates to try to get some ideas about how to manage this digital age during the pandemic. Michael Levine, who's now at Noggin, says this. He talks about possibilities, access, and equity. Kids' enthusiasm for digital activities prevents a great hook for teachers and busy parents to manage their responsibilities. But if educators and parents themselves do not become technically proficient, the full range of digital possibilities and the access to new technology tools will effectively be reserved for the more privileged. And again, embedded in this is this notion that it's not enough that parents have the technology or are aware of technology. We have to help them become more proficient, and educators as well. So this idea I've got about media mentors really is about moving in parallel pathways to becoming more confident and competent as users of technology for educators who then can help parents feel that same way. Lisa Guernsey from the Learning Technologies Project in New America writes again about a mission for media mentors. With ideas and guidance for media mentors, educators and parents can learn to take advantage of children's natural curiosity to build their critical thinking skills about all the messages they see and hear. And Lisa Guernsey was the one who first coined this phrase, media mentor, in the United States, and talked a lot about how it might be educators, it might be informal educators, it might be librarians, it might be parents, that there's lots of people who can be media mentors, but that whoever those mentors are, children are in need of guidance during this digital age. So how has COVID-19 changed our digital environment? We're moving slowly from shelter in place and social distancing to the new normal. But again, in Germany, it might be different than in the United States and in other parts of the world. This movement from shelter in place and social distancing is moving slowly. And in the United States, we are trying to move a little bit out of shelter in place, but very much keeping the social distancing idea. Interacting in real time will finally be real again for children and parents and educators. We've got a real-time interaction we're doing right now via technology. It's not the same as being face-to-face and in real time. Children and adults have discovered new tech tools and gained valuable skills to communicate, to connect, to collaborate, and to create at a distance. I go back to some of the quotes that I mentioned at the very beginning, and this idea that we've got these tools in our hands, we've kind of always had them in our hands, now we've got new ways of using them very intentionally as tools for communication and connection. That's powerful. We've moved from imagining how tech could foster human connections to relying on tech tools for our connections. There's a powerful idea. We've moved from thinking about technology and how it might help us foster human connections to relying on that same technology for being connected with others. Again, a big idea. We understand the meaning of digital humanity thanks to tech tools that have enabled human connections at a time of social distancing and physical distancing. Instead of worrying about screen time, perhaps we should celebrate screens as lifelines that have supported the social and emotional needs of children and families during this long period of isolation from one another. Screens as lifelines instead of screen time as a problem shifts the entire conversation. And a reminder that face-to-face will always win out over face-to-screen. These technologies have been amazing, and thank goodness that we've had them. But getting back together, interacting in real time is what we're all waiting for. But it also has revealed some digital inequalities. We need to be aware of access, equity, and diversity issues that cause digital inequalities to reveal themselves during this time. We need to support families who are underconnected and ended up on the wrong side of the digital divide. We need to help families realize the benefits of using technology for communication and connection when they gain digital skills, have broadband internet, and own a connected device. And those last three magical bits and pieces are really often where the issues around digital equality lies. Help parents as teachers gain competence and confidence in using technology for teaching and learning. And a reminder that multi-age teaching, a parent who has multi-age kids in the home, requires mastery of multiple devices and broad subject matter knowledge. And parents are often saying to us, they just don't feel ready. They don't want to be or need to be, but they know they have to be the teacher of their children at home. We need to promote adult digital literacy. We need to be able to evaluate the source and reliability of information presented online. Certainly in the United States, in the last 3-4 months, we've really been challenged with what's the source of the information, what's reliable, what can we count on, what information is real and what information perhaps is fake, and that's all part of digital literacy. We need to focus on children's rights, protect children's data, and reduce risks. Focus on child choice and agency, online privacy, cyber safety, bullying, and ethical design. And again, I just want to say that these aren't new ideas. They're ideas that have really been elevated during this time when we've been so focused on using technology as our tools to communicate with one another. It has raised the issues in an important way. The NAUIC, the National Association for the Education of Young Children in the United States, recently published Advancing Equity in Early Childhood Education. And I just want to share two quotes from that as they relate to this issue of access and equity. All children have right to equitable learning opportunities that help them achieve their full potential, with and without technology. We need to help children and parents and families thrive by recognizing and building on each child's unique set of individual and family strengths, cultural background, home language, abilities, and experience. This is core early childhood thinking. And I'm overlaying the technology piece on that, but this is really at the heart of what we're all about. Fred Rogers was a beloved children's media person in the United States. He had his own Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood on television for many, many years. And along the way, Fred also became someone whose words comforted us and supported us and gave us some new ideas, as he was so focused on the strengths that we each bring to this conversation. I love this quote from Fred: "Strengthen a parent and you strengthen a child." If we want to know a rationale for family engagement and why it's important for teachers to work with parents and families, this is it. When we work with parents and families, children do better. When children do better, families do better. It's a reciprocal and circular idea. So this idea of engaging in strengthening parents is so important. We really have learned that family engagement matters. Family-centered practice recognizes and honors the key role that families play in their child's development. Recognizes and honors the role families play. When families feel respected, supported, and included, children have better outcomes. We know this. We have the science to prove this piece around parental involvement. When schools and parents collaborate, they can continuously support and encourage children's learning and development. Continuously support and encourage it. Most accurate predictors of school success and positive outcomes are the extent to which the family creates a home environment that encourages learning, and every family has been in the business of trying to create a home environment that encourages learning, and then parents become involved in their child's education at school, in the community, and at home. So family engagement matters, because when we strengthen parents, we strengthen families. When we strengthen families, we strengthen children. Here's some thoughts on family engagement, again from Elena Lopez and her colleagues at the Harvard Family Research Project. This comes from the Family Engagement book. Effective engagement depends on respectful relationships with families and valuing the diverse ways in which they promote their children's outcomes. Digital media can be used not only to provide families with information, but also to increase their understanding to use that information effectively and creatively. There's that media literacy piece. By doing so, families take on the role of lifelong educators and learners. They become powerful teachers for their own children, who also gain new skills themselves. That last sentence, again, captures my entire philosophy around this and around media mentorship and technology-mediated family engagement. Families take on the role as lifelong educators and learners. Families take the responsibility to be educators and learners. They become powerful teachers for their own children who also gain new skills themselves. And again, I think we can make the case that that's what's been happening now. Families have become teachers for their own children, and along the way, they've gained really valuable technology skills. Active digital age parenting matters. This is from the book Children and Families in the Digital Age, wonderful publication by my colleagues Elizabeth G., Lori Takeuchi, and Ellen Wartella. Parents are actively involved in navigating the rapidly evolving media landscape, seeking information, resources, and support, while trying to align new media practices with their values, parenting approaches, and their perceived needs of their children and families. None of these quotes that I'm sharing with you were written during the pandemic, and they all speak so powerfully to the experience that we're all in the middle of. We need to find ways to enhance family engagement. We need to improve two-way communication, and I'm going to come back to that notion of two-way. We need to strengthen the teacher-parent partnership. We need to build community in our programs. And then we connect families with their communities and with other parents and families in the broader community. We need to increase parent involvement because we've just shown the more parents are involved, the better everyone does. We need to encourage parent-to-parent sharing, and this is often left off the list, but this idea of an empowered parent who can share ideas about parenting, or in our case, around technology with another parent, that's something we really want to encourage. We need to empower parents and families. We need to promote family well-being. And then we need to use effective family engagement strategies. It isn't enough to just know that it matters. What are we going to do about it? Well, we start with this idea of ongoing and two-way, that family engagement that really works is about giving and taking, listening and hearing and sharing back. It's something you do with parents, not do to parents. I'm going to say that again because I think it's a powerful idea. Family engagement is something you do with parents, not do to parents. It's for all families, not some of the families. It's in context, their home language, their cultural background, their abilities, experiences, neighborhood, and community. It's strengths-based, children, parents, and families. Again, back to Fred Rogers, who always led with people's strengths and found the strengths first. It's relationship-based. It's about parent-child, parent-teacher, teacher-child relationships. Complex set of relationships here, but are all embedded in our efforts. It's focused on family well-being. It's empowering to parents and engaging to families. Some more thoughts on family engagement. When family engagement really works, it goes well beyond inviting families to attend school events. True engagement is found to be in authentic, individual, mutually beneficial relationships between members of the school community and members of each child's family. There's that notion of authentic, individual, and mutually beneficial. The time has come to shift thinking from attempting to reach some families to taking responsibility to find a way to reach each and every child and family. So there's that notion again of family engagement is about all families. We need to meet parents where they are. We need to be aware of barriers to access and participation, which we just talked about earlier. We need to provide multiple pathways for engagement because not everyone is digital. So if our solution becomes digital only, we're leaving some parents out. Some parents may still need a printed piece of paper with reminders on it that comes home with the child, and an email, and the chance to go to a website. We need to think about providing all of them. This task, as we first take on technology-mediated family engagement, actually becomes more complicated. It'll become less complicated over time, but to begin with, the goal is to not leave anyone out. We need to ask parents how they want to receive information from you, when they want it, how often they want it, how much. Again, I want to stop for the notion of a really big idea here about asking parents. This is about engaging parents in a two-way communication. Ask them how they want to receive information. I might tell you that I need that printed newsletter at home. That's the only way you're going to get my attention. Another parent might say, oh, please email. Another parent might say, oh, just text me. That's the best, right? Find out. Don't assume. Ask them. And then ask them when it's best to get information and how often they want to get information and how much. And that's this notion at the end of dosage is really important. In the studies that we've been looking at around text messaging, dosage becomes really critical. Too much information, not enough information, neither of those are really robust ways to engage families. We need to understand the power of nudges, and I'm going to come back to the psychology of nudges in a little bit, so I'm just going to leave that hang in the air for now. But a lot of what I'm trying to do today is about the power of nudges as well. And then we need to be media mentors to parents so they can be media mentors to their children. The goal here of the educator is to be a media mentor to empower and engage and give new skills to parents so that ultimately we can step back, they can take over, they become confident and competent media mentors for their own children. COVID-19 and the need for parent support. Well, again, in Germany, it might be a little bit different than the United States, but probably not that different. Mothers and fathers have had to wear many hats during this time at home of social distancing and sheltering in place. They've needed to be a spouse and a parent, as they always have been, but those roles have gotten more complicated. They've needed to be homemakers and to keep the house clean and make the meals. They needed to become home-based teachers, which really wasn't their role and what they were looking to become. And some of them need to work from home as employees whose work has continued, but now their workplace has changed. But let's imagine it getting a little more complicated. Imagine the mother's a teacher who is expected to teach from home. So the work that she's doing at home is about teaching other children via technology that she's not familiar with. Perhaps the husband lost his job and has to deal with unexpected financial challenge and hardships. Perhaps the mother's caring for an elderly or ill relative in the home. Perhaps he needs to stay connected and provide care for an elderly relative or another family member at a distance. The pressure from unrealistic expectations and the need to be perfect at all these roles has added stress and heightened the need for support and empowerment for media mentors, for educators who can be supportive of parents and understand this context and how complicated this has become for all of us, and who are probably in this context themselves in most cases. We need to help families make better use of technology. Share how you're using technology and what digital media you use. Recommend educational apps and programs children can use at home to complement what is being done in the program. Partner with other educators to host a parent-teacher playdate and a learning exchange on the use of technology with young children. Remember earlier I talked about parent-to-parent exchange of information? One of the greatest examples we have of this in our work here in the United States was creating these kind of parent tech playdates where parents would come together, not for a presentation by the teacher helped organize it, but to share with each other. What app do you like? How do you use this? How do you solve the screen time problem? What do you do when your child doesn't want to put the screen away at bedtime? Let parents be experts for other parents. Incredibly empowering. Address concerns, but also avoid using messages on the harmful effects of technology use with young children that will scare or shame parents. We do that very, very well. I'm guessing your headlines in Germany are similar to ours in terms of the ways in which they shame parents for letting their children have too much access to technology and scare parents about the negative effects and very rarely talk about positive effects. We need to connect parents to community resources for early learning and technology. This ecology of early learning is something that's really been fun to think about. And again, I go back to my colleague Lisa Guernsey and Media Mentors and her notion of mentors coming from lots of places in the community. From the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, their report, Lost Connections. If my child's teacher told me an app program was educational, I would trust her. This is so important for educators to understand, is that parents assume you know. Parents assume you are the expert. Parents assume you can give them good advice. So one of the reasons that we need to up our game as educators is so that we're ready for those questions and can provide answers, but that we also model ways for parents to find answers and learn new things about technology. We need to develop family engagement strategies that support technology, media, and engagement in real time and asynchronously. So we're actually not in real time, right? I'm recording this in advance. You are watching it asynchronously. We know how to do both. By taking advantage of technological affordances that may overcome the various challenges of using media together. Help families be smarter media consumers and wiser in their content selections. Improve education, promote healthy lifestyles, and positively influence family development outcomes. These are big expectations, big asks for educators. But this is really where the intersection of family engagement and family engagement strategies and technology can come together and help families become more healthy, not just about technology. Well, we certainly heated up the screen time debate again. How much is too much? How do we set limits? What about inappropriate content and commercial messages, which we all, as adults and as in this world of media, need to be concerned about? Negative impact on brain development and social emotional learning. Those are the kind of headlines that scare parents. Displacement and replacement of essentials. What is the child doing, not doing? What's not happening when they're using technology? And in a childcare environment, that could be play and outdoor activities and messy art and things like that that we feel like are displacing. More sleep disruptions and less restorative sleep, less physical activity and more sedentary time, decreased outdoor time, background media and its effects, increased digital distractions for grown-ups. And we're going to come back to that one as well. We need to provide more description and less prescription and help parents figure out how to do these things instead of telling them what they must do. These are complicated things, and I'm not a strong proponent of all of these issues that are raised here, but we must continue to bring up the concerns or we'll never get to the positives. So here's an example. Let's put what we know about screen time into practice. Well, we know joint engagement really matters. So let's help parents understand that when they use media together, it enhances their child's learning. We know that language learning really matters. And we know that children learn language from people, not screens. So make tech use language rich and use these video chat technologies to communicate with others in ways that provide children with language experiences. We know that social emotional learning is so critical in the early years. Let's look for interactive media that invites interactions with others. Interactive media that invites interactions with others. Again, this notion of displacement. Why don't we focus on tech experiences that enhance, not replace? We shouldn't be displacing anything. We should be adding technology in ways that enhance things. Physical activity and sedentary behaviors are genuine concerns. What about if we use technology to encourage active play and time outside? You get my point here, that we can flip this over and think about ways in which technology can address these concerns and make them positive. Sleep disruptions is a big one for parents here in the United States, probably for you all in Germany as well. We need to help parents learn to manage screen time use before bedtime. I love this one because it's actionable research that parents can do something about. Turns out the closer to bedtime that a child has a screen experience, the more likely they are to have difficulty falling asleep, nightmares, night terrors, difficulty staying asleep. So here's the actionable research. Turn the screens off earlier in the evening. Put a bigger gap between the last screen time and bedtime. And then well-being. We need to strive for balance and to find a healthy family media ecology. And by balance, I don't mean 50-50. I mean, what's the balance of all of the things that the child needs to do in a day and what percentage of that time can go to technology in a positive way and what needs to be left for other interactions. We need to minimize the risk, maximize the potential. I think here's another example of this. Help parents reimagine screen time as beneficial. What happens if parents think about screen time as a positive thing instead of a negative thing? It needs to be active, not passive or sedentary. It needs to be interactive, not isolating. It needs to be inclusive, not exclusive. It needs to be all about enhancement, not displacement. It needs to be about meaning making, not meaningless time. It needs to be about creation, not just consumption. And that one's so important, helping children become media creators, not just consumers. And it needs to provide children with tools for learning and for teaching. I'm not arguing that this technology is not about a teaching tool, but I really get excited about technology that kids can use on their own in an empowered way for their own learning. And then this reminder that it's never either or. We need to help parents know what matters most. We know that it's about child development theory and developmentally informed and evidence-based practice and the intersection of those things and technology implications. The whole child and social emotional learning, relationships, early childhood essentials like play and art and time outdoors are still essential. They haven't become less essential now that technology has arrived. We need to figure out how technology supports that or gets out of the way. We don't need it there all the time. The 3 C's goes back to, again, my friend Lisa Guernsey, who talked about content, context, and the child. The content that's on the technology, the context in which the child's using technology, the individual child's interest and level of engagement. Very powerful, very simple, but powerful idea to help parents and educators think about, is this of value? We need more creating and making and storytelling, but we also understand that teacher preparation matters and making sure that educators are prepared to use technology in ways that support children's learning and that help them engage with families. And again, this idea of media mentors really matter, so how do we make sure we get there? This is from the NAUIC and Fred Rogers Center joint position statement in 2012 that I was a co-author of. Technology and media should not replace activities such as creative play, real-life exploration, physical activity, outdoor experiences, conversation, and social interactions that are important for children's development. All of those things are important in the early years. We don't want technology replacing them. We want technology enhancing them. Now let's talk a little bit about the challenge of parent behaviors. We need parents to understand their own tech use and its implications. The American Academy of Pediatrics said this: because parent media use is a strong predictor of child media habits, reducing parental media use and enhancing parent-child interactions may be an important area of behavior change. If we want to change the way young children use technology, perhaps we need to look at the ways in which the adults around them, the most important people in their lives, are using technology. I love this quote from Randy Pausch: when there's an elephant in the room, introduce him. So I'm introducing this elephant today. The elephant is how parents are using media themselves in the presence of their children. We need to help grown-ups put their masks on first. Maybe it's Lufthansa, or in my case, the United States airline. If you've been on an airline, then you've heard this safety briefing that talks about putting your own mask on first and then helping the child who's with you. I think it's a really, really good metaphor for what we need to do. We need adults to put their masks on first, then they'll be ready to help. So we strive for do as I say, end as I do. We find the balance between the risks of parenting without presence, being alone together, background media and technoference, and the benefits of being a fully present, engaged, and connected parent. And understanding in that second bullet point that parents make choices, adults make choices, educators make choices that implicate how this is going to come out. So we want them to be more aware of the choices they're making. Let your child show you and teach you. Flip it over and let the child be the teacher. Consider your screen time as secondhand smoke, an indirect health hazard for your children. And what parental controls will help you? Again, a metaphor, but this idea that we have these parental controls that we put on the technology that young children use to control the amount of time they spend, to control access to certain kinds of information. Maybe we need parental controls for parents. And then lastly, this quote comes from China in a public service announcement. I think it's so powerful. The more you connect, the less you connect. The more you connect, the less you connect. I think it's so powerful because it really works in both directions. The more you connect with your technology as a parent, the less time you have to connect with your child. The more you connect with your child, the less time you have to connect with your technology. So it can go both ways. Again, it's about choices. It's about empowering parents to make good choices. We need to protect children from scary images and sounds and news for adults on the screens. And certainly this is a everyday occurrence for us here in the United States. What's on the news is frightening to adults, much less to young children. We need to pause and think before you turn on a radio, television, or tech device when children are around, or simply turn it off and there be no screens on when children are around. Be mindful of media in the background at home and when you're out and about. And we have really solid research evidence of the impact of background media on children's play, on their losing focus on what they're working on or talking about how they can't not hear it when it's on. We need to check and set parental and safe search controls. We need to keep comforting routines consistent. And certainly in this time that we've all been through, that notion of regular routines and comfort that can help parents ease the stress that their children are feeling is so important. We need to talk with your child and listen to what they're thinking and feeling and reassure them that you will keep them safe. And I think that last part is so important. During this time of the pandemic, children are nervous about what if you get sick? What if my parent gets sick? What if I get sick? They need to hear from you that you'll be there for them and you'll keep them safe. We need to encourage digital well-being. I love this quote from Dr. Michael Rich. We call him the mediatrician here in the United States. He's a pediatrician who does a lot of work on media's impact on kids. Our focus should be on living well with media rather than opposing or restricting it. Let's focus on living well with media. The media is here. We're not going to take it away. We're not going to uninvent the iPad. Why don't we think instead, how do we live well with this? And what does it mean to live well with media? And put our energy into that powerful reminder. Okay, I talked about nudges before. The idea of nudges and the science of nudges is the idea that if you share simple messages that affirm, acknowledge, encourage, empower, and engage parents, you can lead to, over time, some behavioral change. We need to provide affirmation of the importance of the role parents play. We need to acknowledge parents' primary role as the media mentors. Whether they're ready for it or not, they already have that responsibility. And that we need to provide messages that are easy to understand and actionable. Here are some of my favorites from my work over the last year or two. I've been a collector of simple and actionable statements. Again, back to Fred Rogers, strengthen a parent and you strengthen a child. Fred Rogers always said to parents, no matter how bad they were feeling about their own parenting, your child is lucky to have a parent like you. How affirming is that? Vroom, which I'll talk about in a moment, you already have what it takes. The very first message that a parent gets when the child's been born is, you already have what it takes. That's as affirming and empowering as we can be. Doesn't mean we're not going to help you, doesn't mean we're not going to provide you with more information, but it means that what you come to as a parent is valuable. PBS Kids has been saying during all of this, you are enough. It's enough for you to be who you are as a parent, and that right now, that's what children need the most. We know that relationships matter most. We love this idea of catching them being good. In our case, it might be catching teachers doing really interesting things. It might be teachers catching parents doing really interesting things. It might be us catching kids doing good things. Here's a few more. The more you connect, the less you connect. I repeated that one. Provide more description and less prescription comes from Devorah Heitner in the book Screenwise. Spend less time monitoring and more time mentoring, also from Devorah. That's a great one. Spend less time monitoring and more time mentoring, and the use of technology in your home will improve for you and for the child. Quality time together can include screens. Connect screen experiences to real life. Use media to encourage creativity, curiosity, and wonder. And this last one from Anya, I think is so perfect. Enjoy screens, not too much, mostly with others. So there you go. Place limits on the amount of time that you spend on the screens, but enjoy them while you're using them and use them to connect with others. That really fits our message as media mentors for parents. And then we need to identify promising practices that push and pull. And I understand that this slide is just overrun with information. I wanted you to see some of the programs that we've been looking at here in the United States. Every one of these you have a link to every one of these in the resource handout that I prepared and that you'll have available to you. So if you want to know more about these specific programs, then you can do that. So what we did in the book that we wrote together, social media, email, e-newsletters, public engagement campaigns, these are things that are familiar to us, but that we're becoming better at. And to be honest, social media wasn't that familiar to many of us. So learning to communicate well with families via social media is important. Websites and selected links to online resources. So having center-based or school-based websites that parents can go to get resources and information and connect with others is really important. And linking people to powerful resources beyond your own. Mobile apps, text messages, on-demand video, and video chat. This is where all the excitement has been in the United States. This is where all the energy has been, where some of the research is starting to come. But this notion that we have these mobile technologies, we can send parents short text messages, little nudges, right? We can provide them with on-demand video to show them what it looks like. We can provide them with the opportunity to video chat with others. This is powerful stuff. These are powerful ideas. Here's what some of these organizations have been doing: providing parenting tips about child development and early learning via text message, providing customized tips about the age of your child, the stage of your child, the culture or language that you work in, so that the tip becomes very customizable and arrives for the parent just in time. Child-parent communication and engagement tools like Message from Me, which you see on the screen, is another example of technology that's been used to shorten the distance, shorten the time that parents and children are apart during the long school day, and in fact help them communicate. Two-way e-portfolios, like in this case, like Story Park is the one that I've listed here. But this notion again of two-way, that it isn't just the teacher dumping information for the parent, but it's the parent giving information back about the child as a learner, child's home experience, and that other members of the family can look in as well. It's about digital skill building and digital literacy for parents. Tech Goes Home in the lower right-hand corner of the screen is a wonderful example of working specifically with the parent to gain technology and digital literacy skills so they can become more effective with their children at home. And then this idea again of psychological nudges, simple, actionable, just-in-time messages. So lots of work going on in the United States. I'm sure there's lots of work going on in Germany as well around these things. What it really comes down to for me is we have the technology. Parents are using the technology. We can meet parents where they are. And again, now we go back to dosage. How much, when, is all important part of this and what we're learning. But it's also very individual. So in search of research-based practices, what do we know about evidence-based and developmentally informed benefits or harms? This is a provocation for all of you who are listening. What do we know already? I shared a little bit about my version of what we know already, but the research is coming slowly and the evidence is coming slowly. So we need to continue to ask the questions about benefits and harms. How does 50 years of children's television research inform our understanding of children's use of digital devices? The child sitting in front of a television screen watching children's media program is a different experience than a child in an interactive environment on a tablet computer or on a desktop computer or on the parent's phone. What are the implications of children using technology tools that were designed for adults? The iPhone, the iPad, Alexa, and others were not designed for children. That was not the intent of the designers. The intent was to create these powerful tools for adults, and yet these tools end up in children's hands. Do we understand the implications of that? Do we understand what it means to turn these technologies over to children before we even understand how we're using them as adults? And what do we need to know about digital well-being to help for young children and their families live well with media, to help families live well with media? This concept of digital well-being, we need to help understand that definition. Okay, so we're going to move toward the end here, and again with another provocation. Every child needs a media mentor. Every parent and family needs a media mentor. Every educator needs to be a media mentor. Who mentors the mentors? How do we help the teachers become confident and competent and knowledgeable enough around technology to be able to be that media mentor for the family, who then becomes the media mentor for their own children? Lisa Guernsey and Michael Levine, who I've quoted earlier on, said, as much as media mentors are needed for families, they're also needed for teachers. So this idea, if you accept it, that this mentorship, this idea of helping others learn how to use this new technology is across the board. It's parents, it's grandparents, it's teachers, it's librarians, it's anyone who's involved in the young children in their lives and can help them become more competent themselves as media users. So be a media mentor. Develop and use effective family engagement strategies. Empower parents and engage families. Meet parents where they are. Help parents become screen wise instead of screen worried. Help parents understand their own technology use. Encourage digital wellness and living well with media. Use simple, actionable messages that affirm, acknowledge, encourage, empower, and engage. Nudge. Identify promising practices and evidence-based practices that we can improve our own classroom practices as educators, but can help parents understand what they do at home as well. So some reminders for media mentors after the pandemic is behind us, and let's all hope that is not too far in the future. Always put the child before the technology. Remember, it's not about the technology, it's about relationships. Your non-negotiable early childhood essentials before the pandemic are still, to borrow a phrase, essential, not expendable. If it mattered then, it matters now. You've missed the children and they've missed you. Sheltering in place and social distancing went on way too long for children and adults. Take your time and be patient. Give children the gift of unhurried rediscovery of the classroom, materials, and their friends. Unhurried time, the gift of time. Reestablish familiar, predictable, and comforting routines, rituals, traditions, transitions, and play patterns. Get back to those things that the children know already and that provided them with comfort and help them manage the long day away from their parents. Get back to what was familiar to help them become refamiliarized now. Provide extra time for hands-on activities, play, and time outdoors. We might want to tilt the balance a little bit as we first come back together and really give kids opportunities for these central, pivotal kinds of experiences like play, like time outdoors, like getting their hands involved. Embrace digital storytelling and encourage children's virus, shelter at home, and technology-related play, stories, and artwork. They're going to have stories to tell. They're going to have stories to share. They're going to have a lot to talk about that happened while you were not together. So encourage that and make it possible for them to tell those stories and to share them with each other. Expect some difficult transitions and unrealistic expectations about access to screens. Your limits for technology still matter. We might need to ease back into them a little bit. Children have, in fact, had more time with technology, more access to screens than ever before during this time. We can't just assume that they're going to drop those behind and move on to other things. So it will be a transition, and we need to be realistic. If you connected with the children via technology, if you taught via technology for young children, had circle times or read stories or whatever that you did, try the same activities on both sides of the screen. In other words, the children experienced you from a distance on the screen. Now let them see you up close and personal doing the same activity. It will help connect the dots. Connect this reel with that reel. We've got what will become this reel, the new normal. But we had a reel before all of this too. Share photos, tell stories, and talk about shared experiences from before, from during, and now. We have to make sure that we help children connect the dots. This is part of their living history. It's part of all of our living history. So it's not all a rush to leave it all behind. It's a rush to get back together, reconnect, and then understand what happened before, what happened during the time we were social distancing from each other and sheltering in place, and now. And one more set. Keep your tech tools keep using those tech tools you've learned how to use well for communication and connection to become a connected educator. Share your best classroom practices with other educators. And I can't emphasize enough around this notion of evidence-based practice. As you figure out things to do with technology in your classroom, with the children in your care, share those ideas so others can gain from that and can push back and share ideas back as well. We need a global communication, a global conversation amongst educators around how to use these tools well with children and support families. Keep using your new tech tools to engage families and empower parents. So again, you've learned how to do some things in a new and powerful way. Don't stop once this is over. In fact, figure out how it fits to continue to do those things. Help families define digital well-being and living well with media. And I know I've said that multiple times now, but I think we're in search of a definition for digital well-being, and we're in search of a definition of living well with media. And maybe we didn't find that definition while we've all been at home and with too much tech time, but maybe we learned some important things about what it means to have well-being and our family around technology. Mindfully manage and balance your own screen use and model healthy media habits and values. If you're going to be a media mentor, then you need to be a role model and to be showing and telling around how adults can use media positively. Be an enthusiastic tour guide, co-explorer, media mentor, and helper for children and grown-ups. Be a helper that others look for and find. Fred Rogers talks about look for the helpers, and that quote comes up every time there's a natural disaster or a pandemic or whatever is going on. Look for the helpers. I think it's also important for media mentors to be the helper that others look for and find. And let me leave you now with one more piece from Fred Rogers. A reminder that mentoring is reciprocal. All of us at some time or other need help. Whether we're giving or receiving help, each one of us has something valuable to bring to this world. That's one of the things that connects us as neighbors. In our own way, each one of us is a giver and a receiver. Powerful words from Fred, certainly someone who's inspired my thinking around relationships and around strength and around engaging and empowering parents. So thank you very much for taking the time to take a look at this presentation. Again, I wish we could have done this face-to-face, the real face-to-face, but at least we've had these technologies and allowed us to do this. And in my case, allowed us to use the technology to do the kinds of things that I've been talking about for family engagement. So thank you very much, and all the best to you, your families, the families that you care for during this very, very difficult time.